Hey guys, just wanted to continue my videos on kind of what we're doing with the programming here. Last time I did a video, we talked a lot about the principle of overload and why we were starting with weights so low to continually add a little bit of weight each week in order to get the adaptations that we're looking for, which is getting stronger and getting better at each particular movement. Building that inner and intra-muscular coordination. I alluded to a couple of other principles in the last video, one being the principle of specificity and the other one being the SAID principle. So with this specificity, we're trying to get to specific adaptations, like we talked about, getting a little bit stronger, getting better at these movements. So with the principle of specificity, which is really hard to say, it's really the principle of form following function. So, one of the reasons when you see things in sport or whatever, you see that there's certain form, and it's also based on the function. That's how muscles work. Is they will adhere to the function you're giving them, right? So right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to get stronger and better at the movements. And what we tend to see is people push the weights a little too much, and I'm seeing some of that now where they're not necessarily perhaps at the right weights. They're already starting to progress a little too fast to where what we're going to see is the weights starting to change the technique rather than challenge it. What we're trying to do here is we want to challenge the technique. That's what the loads are for. It should be maybe difficult to stay in a particular groove or a particular movement pattern, but once you start to change that technique, that's when the load's too great for it, right? And where you see that, say, like with a squat, let's say your load is so great, but your trunk stability and your tensile strength is not such that you can hold your chest posture in the proper manner, and all of a sudden you start to taco. Your back starts to round. I see that a lot in the deadlifts too, where the back will round instead of staying rigid. That is a point at which we've kind of hit that tipping point where the load is now, instead of challenging the technique, it's now changing it, right? So we want to be real careful when we're doing things here that we are challenging the technique and not changing it, right? That's the point. That the more tensile strength we get as we get better and stronger, then obviously those loads push greater and greater, and we're able to hold that technique and challenge that technique as opposed to changing it. The other principle is the SAID principle, which is specific adaptation to imposed demands, right? So right now we're imposing several demands. One, we're imposing the demand on our squat technique, our deadlift technique, power and speed through the power clean, speed through the sprinting, and working on that technique, getting a little bit faster, because we can train fast, we can be fast, right? The other thing with this SAID principle too is we can look at limiting factors. And with limiting factors, we see it a lot in CrossFit. CrossFit doesn't necessarily work on our mid backs and our hamstrings. So we are trying to right now get to where we are working on our posterior chain, both our upper posterior and our lower posterior. That's why we're doing a lot of things that I think a lot of you are seeing, that your hamstrings are starting to kind of feel it a little bit, right? So we are working on, there's my assistant. We are working on getting our posterior involved. That's why we're doing a lot of pulling, trying to get that upper back to get a little bit stronger, and that's why we're doing our step-ups and our lunges, where we're concentrated on pulling through with our hamstrings. If your hamstrings are weak, your upper back is weak, our pulling strength gets weak, our ability to actually generate force and power is compromised. So that's why we're working on a lot of these things. One of the things I want y'all to start to notice is that we might be starting to get to a point where we're going to approach a situation where if we have a prescription of 3 sets of 5 at certain weight, you may not reach your 3 sets of 5. You might get the first 5, maybe the second set you might get 4, maybe the third set you might get 2. You're getting to a point in a weight that you're gonna struggle with it, okay? So there's a couple of things that can happen with that. One, it could be that your night before you didn't get a lot of sleep, and your performance isn't going to be as great today. So that's cool. We're actually looking for that point. We're looking for that point where you can't get that 3 sets of 5, right? So what we'll do is what we're gonna call a reload, right? So let's say this next week you're at a situation with your back squat that you can't get all three sets of 5, okay? Cool. Next time that we back squat, or next time you back squat again, you're gonna do the same weight that you couldn't get the 3 sets of 5, because you might be able to get it this second time. Maybe you sleep better, maybe you don't have the stress, whatever was going on in your life that day, you might be able to get it. If that's cool, then the next week you add weight again, okay? However, if 2 sessions in a row you can't get that same weight, 3 sets of 5, or the 1 set of 5 for the deadlift, or the 5 sets of 3 at the particular weight in the power clean, then what you're going to do is you're going to reset, okay? And that reset, you're going to go back 3 weeks. So you're going to cut back, depending on what exercise it is, you're going to go back 3 weeks and start back at that weight, okay? And from there, we're going to start to apply what we call compensatory acceleration. And that is the point where everybody has a point in whatever movement it is where there's kind of a sticking point. The bar speed starts to slow down a little bit. Well, that's fine. But once you get past that sticking point, then you have a period where it's actually easier, right? The weight gets easier. In a back squat, it tends to be somewhere about 3/4 of the way up. All of a sudden, you can speed up. And so what we want to do is once you get past that sticking point, you're going to finish fast, right? So I want you to work on this accelerating, over-speeding the bar a little bit to stand up in a back squat, or to finish your hips in a deadlift, or to complete your lockout in the bench press. Those are the places where we can start to get into that quick, that fast twitch fiber that builds power and speed. And so we're going to do that through that compensatory acceleration. So at that lighter weight, you've kind of built this movement pattern. At the lighter weight, you're going to be able to move that load a little bit faster, and that's what we're going to work on. So I want you to watch out for the reset and the reload and the reset, and we'll talk further about that in videos coming forward and in class. All right, thanks.